back to Rabbit Trails and Revelations. I'm Roman Hale, and with me, as always, is Avery Rose, the only person I know who can make cosmic mysteries sound cozy.
That may be the nicest thing you've ever said about my overthinking, Roman.
Oh, I meant it as a compliment. Mostly. Today's episode is called The Spinning Secret of the Universe, and this one is a doozy.
Yes, it is. We're stepping into one man's very unconventional way of looking at creation, gravity, matter, motion, and the fingerprints of God in the physical world.
That's fascinating.
It really is.
And just to be clear from the start, this isn't a science lecture, and we're not asking anyone to trade their telescope for a toolbox.
Exactly.
So grab your coffee, your curiosity, and maybe something that spins, because today we're chasing a theory that starts small and ends up somewhere very, very big.
You know, usually when we picture the ultimate secrets of the universe being unlocked, we tend to imagine this massive chalkboard.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Right. Like it's covered edge to edge in completely impenetrable, complex quantum mathematics.
Yeah.
And there's, some genius in a lab coat furiously scribbling an equation that finally explains everything.
It is a very intimidating image, for sure.
It really is. It makes you feel like the fundamental truths of reality are just completely locked away from the rest of us. Like you need a PhD and, well, a supercomputer just to even join the conversation.
Yeah, there is this deeply ingrained assumption that if something is profound, it inherently has to be incredibly complicated. I mean, the barrier to entry for modern cosmology just feels incredibly high.
But what if that chalkboard is actually pointing us in the exact wrong direction? I mean, what if the most profound secrets of the universe aren't hidden in complex math at all, but are actually sitting right there in front of us, just waiting for someone with enough childlike, unfiltered curiosity to actually notice them?
Like, instead of a supercomputer, what if you just needed to look really closely at, say, a spinning top?
Exactly. And that is exactly the premise of the journey we are going on today. We are doing a deep dive into a completely radical, alternative view of the cosmos.
It really is radical.
It is. We're pulling from excerpts of a self-published book titled Holy Science: How I Stumbled Across the Answers to the Universe. That's by John W. Hubert. And we're also using a really helpful summary video from the YouTube channel Faithful Curiosity.
Yeah, that video is a great breakdown.
And just to be crystal clear, with you listening right now, we are not taking sides here. Hubert has some highly charged critiques of secular science, the educational establishment, and atheism.
Right, and we aren't endorsing his theology or his scientific conclusions.
No, not at all.
And we aren't here to debunk them either.
Exactly. We are just here because the way this guy deconstructs reality from the ground up is, well, it's just a wild, captivating thought experiment. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
To really wrap our heads around this theory, we first have to understand the mind of the theorist. Hubert proudly calls himself average man. He explicitly states he isn't a genius, and in fact, he dropped out of college.
And that dropout status is actually central to his entire epistemology.
How so?
Well, Hubert became deeply suspicious of formal education. He started believing that the university system had essentially become an institution of control.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, he felt higher education kind of puffs up the ego, and it rewards people just for having a good memory, prioritizing rote memorization over actual organic comprehension of how physical mechanics work.
Which makes sense why he leans so heavily on Albert Einstein to back this up.
Yeah.
He loves quoting lines like, "I have no special talent, I am only passionately curious."
Right.
So instead of staying in a lecture hall to memorize equations, Hubert just leaves. He goes out, he runs small businesses, works with his hands. He deals a lot with blower motors and gyroscopes.
Which is key for later.
Very key. And at 28 years old, he just starts silently asking fundamental questions, not math questions. He just looks at the world and asks, how did God make an atom?
And because he isn't burdened by the standard mathematical models of quantum mechanics, he approaches the atom purely through structural geometry.
Just looking at the shapes.
Exactly. He looks at a basic atom, right? A large central mass with smaller satellites orbiting it on a flat plane.
Okay, yeah.
Then he looks up at the solar system. A large central mass, the sun, with planets orbiting on a flat plane.
I see where this is going.
Then he scales up to a galaxy and he sees the exact same structure.
It's like Russian nesting dolls.
Yes, perfect analogy.
From the absolute microscopic level all the way to the macrocosmic level, it is the exact same structural blueprint repeating itself over and over again.
And if you're listening to this and visualizing that, it's hard not to see his point.
It really is visually striking.
Yeah.
But I have to push back a little here. If I follow Hubert's logic, if he believes the atom and the universe share the exact same structural blueprint, he has to immediately run into a huge problem with mainstream science.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we all agree that a stable atom is not constantly expanding outward, right? So if the atom is stable, he must assume the universe is stable, which means he's tossing out the entire concept of the expanding universe.
This raises an important question. If the universe isn't expanding, well, what happens to the Big Bang Theory?
Right, because the entire foundation of modern cosmology is built on that expansion.
Exactly. And Hubert's structural observation leads him to completely reject the Big Bang. He just throws it out.
Why?
He views it as a flawed mathematical model that physicists keep tweaking because they refuse to see the structural reality right in front of them. He argues that creation didn't happen from some massive explosion down, but rather from the tiny particle up.
But wait, if we freeze the universe and say the Big Bang never happened, we suddenly have to explain why every telescope shows galaxies moving.
Right, they're definitely moving.
So if it wasn't a primordial explosion that set all this cosmic matter into motion, what is powering this endless cosmic engine? That has to lead Hubert to a completely different mechanical explanation for how space operates.
And it does. It leads him right back to his blue-collar roots.
The blower motors.
The blower motors. Hubert takes one simple universal observation: everything spins.
Okay.
The Earth spins, the solar system spins, galaxies spin, even electrons spin. And if you observe a blower motor or a fan or a gyroscope, you know that when you spin something fast enough, it creates a vortex.
Right.
The centrifugal force pushes material outward, which leaves a low pressure zone, a vacuum, right in the center.
Oh, I get it. Think about the fluid dynamics of a hurricane.
Yes.
You have this massive swirling vortex of high-pressure wind pushing outward, but right in the center, the eye of the storm, the pressure drops completely.
Exactly. Hubert looks at that mechanical reality and just applies it to space. Now, if you're listening, this is where you really have to bend your mind around his framework.
Brace yourselves.
Hubert claims that gravity is not some magical, invisible property that matter possesses. Gravity is simply the vacuum created by spinning space.
That is wild. Because in Newtonian physics, mass inherently attracts mass. And in Einstein's relativity, mass bends the fabric of space-time.
And Hubert discards both of those. He posits that space itself is a tangible substance, much like that old concept of the ether.
Oh.
So when that spatial substance spins, it creates a vortex. And the vacuum in the center of that vortex is gravity. Matter doesn't have gravity. The gravitational vortex holds the matter.
It's like leaves caught in a whirlpool in a stream. The leaves aren't magically pulling each other together. The swirling water is forcing them into the center of the low-pressure zone.
That is exactly how he sees it.
Okay, that whirlpool analogy makes so much mechanical sense if you are just observing the physical world. But again, I have to push back here.
Go for it.
The main piece of evidence for the Big Bang isn't just a random assumption. It's the redshift.
Right, the redshift.
Astronomers look at distant galaxies, and the light coming from them is shifted toward the red end of the spectrum. Physics tells us this means those galaxies are moving away from us. It's the Doppler effect, like a police siren dropping in pitch as it drives past you.
Standard Cosmology 101.
Right. So if the universe isn't expanding outward, why is the light stretching?
Well, Hubert argues that the redshift is indeed evidence of immense velocity, but it isn't the velocity of expansion. It is the velocity of the universe spinning.
Spinning, like a merry-go-round.
Exactly, like a massive merry-go-round. If you are standing near the center, you are turning, but your actual speed through the air is relatively slow.
Right.
But if you are standing at the very outer edge of that merry-go-round, you are traveling through space at a terrifying speed just to keep up with the rotation.
What?
Hubert says the universe is a giant spinning vortex. The galaxies at the outer edges are spinning laterally at such extreme speeds that it distorts the light traveling from them to us. Astronomers measure that distortion and wrongly assume the galaxy is flying directly away from us rather than spinning laterally around us.
Hold on, though. A merry-go-round implies a center axis. A whirlpool has a center drop. If the entire universe is just a massive spinning vortex, wouldn't we see a colossal gravitational center point that everything is rotating around?
You would think so.
If we're on a string, there must be someone holding it. Does Hubert address where this cosmic center is?
He does, but it requires stepping outside of observable boundaries. Hubert posits that the center of the universal vortex might be so far beyond our observational horizon that we simply cannot detect the curvature of the spin yet.
So it looks like a straight line to us.
Exactly. From our vantage point, the movement looks linear. just like standing on a massive sphere makes the ground look perfectly flat. We only see a fraction of the swirling current, so we misinterpret the lateral spin as an outward explosion.
Okay, so we have this massive swirling universe, with gravity simply being the low-pressure vacuums created by spinning space.
Right.
But that leads to an even bigger logical hurdle.
What's that?
If gravity is just spinning space pulling things in, what exactly is the matter getting pulled? What are rocks and trees and planets and the protons inside them? If everything is just space, how do we get solid objects?
Hubert roots his answer to this directly in the opening lines of Genesis. God says, "Let there be light."
And he takes that literally.
Incredibly literally, not just as illumination, but as the fundamental building block of all physical reality. He argues that the speed of light is the mortar of creation.
Wow.
If gravity is just spinning space, matter is simply space spinning at the speed of light.
Okay, let's try to translate the mechanics of this with an analogy for the listener.
Mm-hmm.
Think about water flowing out of a garden hose.
Okay.
It's moving, it's fluid, it's passing you by. That is what a light wave is. It's energy moving along a path at the speed of light, and it's so spread out it barely has measurable mass. But if you were to take that flowing water, trap it, and freeze it into a spinning, condensed geometric shape, suddenly you have an ice cube. You have a solid object you can actually hold in your hand.
That is a great way to picture it.
So Hubert is basically saying that matter is literally just frozen light. It is light energy trapped in a localized vortex, spinning so fast to gain solid cohesion.
Yes. When it moves laterally, it's a wave. When you condense that space and spin it internally at the speed of light, it becomes solid matter. And this leads Hubert to an incredibly elegant explanation for the particles inside an atom.
How so?
Well, if you look at standard quantum mechanics, you have quarks, leptons, gauge bosons, just a massive array of subatomic particles with different fractional charges and masses.
Right. The standard model of particle physics is wildly complicated. You've got up quarks, down quarks, muons, neutrinos. It's a lot.
Hubert sweeps that entire zoo of particles off the table.
Just gets rid of them.
Yep. He says there's really only one particle, and all that matters is its orientation. To him, a proton and an electron are the exact same thing.
Wait, really? The same thing?
The exact same thing. They are both localized vortices of space spinning at the speed of light. The only difference is that one is upside down relative to the other.
I found the mechanics of this part so fascinating because he goes right back to his blue-collar gyroscopes.
Yes, the gyroscopes.
If you take a toy gyroscope, pull the string, and spin it clockwise, the angular momentum vector causes it to pull to the right.
Right.
If you take that exact same gyroscope, don't change anything about it, but just physically flip it upside down, suddenly the spin is counterclockwise relative to you, and it pulls to the left.
And Hubert says that is all polarity is.
That's crazy. So positive and negative charges aren't mysterious inherent properties?
Not at all. A positive charge is just a tiny spinning vortex of light-oriented north-up, and a negative charge is that same vortex-oriented south-up.
What about a neutron?
He applies the same logic. If a proton is spinning on a vertical axis, a neutron is just that same vortex turned completely sideways, spinning on an equatorial double axis.
So because it's sideways.
Exactly. Because it's spinning sideways, its angular momentum doesn't present a distinct north or south pole to its neighbors, which completely neutralizes its polarity.
That is so simple.
And what's profoundly interesting from an analytical standpoint is what Hubert is attempting to achieve here. Mainstream physics has spent nearly a century trying to unify the four fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force.
The holy grail of physics.
Right. And Hubert is attempting to unify all four into a single gyroscopic principle of spinning space, vacuum pressure, and polar orientation.
It's an incredibly unified, highly mechanical vision. But the more I sit with these mechanics, the more I see a glaring physical problem.
Okay, lay it on me.
If everything is just these spinning vortices of space creating vacuums that constantly suck things in, why hasn't the entire universe just collapsed into one giant, dense clump?
Ah, the entropy problem.
Right. The laws of entropy and thermodynamics dictate that a system left to itself will decay. If you spin a quarter on your desk, it looks perfectly stable for a few seconds, but friction and gravity eventually cause the angular momentum to bleed off, it wobbles, and it falls flat.
Hubert recognizes this exact anomaly. He calls it sustained order. And this is the threshold where his physics seamlessly transitions into his theology.
Okay, here we go.
The Earth has been orbiting the sun for over 4 billion years. The electrons in an atom have been spinning since the dawn of time. Hubert asks, why doesn't the cosmic quarter fall flat? How is there perpetual animation in a physical system that should suffer from drag and entropy?
Because if space is a tangible substance creating a whirlpool, moving through that substance should create immense friction. The orbits should decay. The atoms should crash into each other.
Exactly. Hubert points out that secular scientists have to invent concepts like the Big Bang's ongoing accelerating expansion to explain why everything hasn't clumped together under gravity.
Right, dark energy and all that.
But Hubert argues that this perfect, perpetual spacing is absolute proof that a physical universe cannot exist on its own. It requires a supernatural force constantly, actively pushing against the decay.
He calls it a divine surface tension.
That's the phrase, yes.
He argues that God places a literal boundary around every single atom. Think about two strong magnets. You bring them close, and they violently snap together. But at the atomic level, their actual atoms never merge. They hit a boundary.
They just stop.
Right. Hubert says that physical distance between particles is maintained moment by the conscious will of God. If God stopped willing the universe to exist for even 1 second, the surface tension would fail, and the entire spinning construct would dissolve back into nothingness.
He really sees the signature of the Creator written into the very framework of reality. He notes that for anything to exist at all, you need 3 absolutes: time, space, and energy.
Okay.
And fascinatingly, each of those absolutes has exactly 3 properties. Time requires past, present, and future. Space requires height, width, and depth. Energy requires potential, will, and consciousness.
Wow, 3 by 3.
Exactly. Hubert looks at this precise 3-by-3 architecture and sees a perfect structural mirror of the triune nature of God: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Hubert uses this concept of divine absolutes to completely reject Albert Einstein's theory of relativity.
Oh yeah, he goes right after Einstein again?
Einstein famously taught that space and time are relative to the observer. The classic example is time dilation, right? If I'm in a spaceship moving near the speed of light, my clock ticks slower relative to someone standing still on Earth. Time itself bends.
But Hubert says no. Time and space are absolutes, mandated by God. They cannot bend.
So how does he explain the math? Because time dilation is proven.
Hubert believes Einstein misunderstood what he calls absolute relativity. Hubert doesn't deny the math of time dilation. He denies the philosophical conclusion.
Okay, unpack that for me.
He agrees that physical objects, like a mechanical clock or a vibrating atom, will become squeezed or distorted by the pressure of moving through spinning space at high speeds.
Let me make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. If I take an old-school grandfather clock and sink it to the bottom of the ocean, the pendulum is going to swing much slower because of the friction and pressure of the water.
Right, the water slows it down.
But time itself didn't slow down. My measuring device just suffered mechanical drag. Is Hubert saying the same thing happens to atomic clocks moving at high speed?
That is exactly his argument. Hubert views space as a dense substance. Moving through it near the speed of light subjects a physical measuring device to extreme spatial drag.
That is a wild shift in perspective.
It is. The atomic clock slows down because of mechanical pressure, not because the absolute reality of time is malleable. To Hubert, claiming time itself bends is a massive error caused by failing to separate a physical measuring device from a divine constant.
So we have this incredibly intricate, entirely mechanical, yet deeply theological model of the universe. Which begs the million-dollar question. If this is all based on simple, observable structures like gyroscopes, blower motors, and the solar system, why does mainstream science completely ignore it?
Right. Why isn't anyone talking about this?
Yeah, if it's so obvious, why aren't physicists talking about spinning space and divine surface tension?
Well, Hubert's answer to that is a blistering critique of the scientific establishment. He believes that modern physicists are wearing an intellectual blindfold.
An intellectual blindfold.
Yes. In his view, they are so buried in the trenches of their own highly abstract, complex equations that they have completely lost the ability to simply observe the structural reality of the physical world.
Wow.
Furthermore, he argues they have a vested, almost biased interest in maintaining a godless universe, because acknowledging a supernatural origin would completely upend their entire worldview, their funding, and their prestige.
He actually calls theories like dark matter, string theory, and the multiverse nothing more than math band-aids.
Math band-aids, that's a great term.
Right. If we look at dark matter, physicists notice that galaxies spin so fast they should tear themselves apart. There isn't enough visible mass to hold them together.
So they invented dark matter to make the math work.
Exactly. Hubert thinks that because physicists started with a flawed premise, the Big Bang and Newtonian gravity, their math constantly falls apart. But instead of throwing out the bad premise and realizing gravity is just a vortex, they just invent invisible stuff like dark matter to make the equations balance.
It's like patching a sinking ship.
He essentially accuses the scientific community of writing science fiction to avoid admitting that a supernatural force is holding the universe together.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it traces back to Hubert's own personal journey with these ideas. After he mapped out all these mechanical revelations, he got really excited. He wanted recognition.
Understandably.
Sure, he tried to force the knowledge, organize it, copyright it, and basically prove his own brilliance to the world. And the result of that ego trip? He hit a massive wall.
Writer's block.
Severe writer's block for 10 straight years. He discovered absolutely nothing new during that time.
He realized that trying to force knowledge through human will and ego actually kills discovery. It was only when he surrendered his ego, accepted that knowledge has to grow organically, like a tree growing branches in all directions at once, that the insight started flowing again.
He truly believes the rigid pressure cooker environment of modern academia destroys that organic, intuitive faith required to actually see the truth.
It is vital to reiterate here, as we navigate these final points, that Hubert's rhetoric gets very intense. He goes as far as calling the denial of his truths satanic, and he genuinely believes modern schooling destroys human creativity.
Right. Those are his personal, deeply held views.
Yes. But regardless of whether you accept his theological conclusions or his specific gyroscopic physics, the intellectual value for you, the listener, is watching how one individual completely deconstructed our most complex scientific realities using nothing but basic physical observation and his own faith.
It's the ultimate outsider's perspective.
It really is. So what does this all mean? We've gone on quite a journey today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started with an average guy dropping out of college because he hated rote memorization. We watched him look at a blower motor and deduce that gravity is just the low-pressure vacuum of spinning space.
We explored the deeply mechanical idea that every proton and electron in your body is just light energy frozen into a specific gyroscopic orientation.
And that the only thing keeping those vortices from collapsing is the active, moment-by-moment surface tension provided by the will of God.
It really challenges you to reflect on your own relationship with information. Like, how much of what we accept as fact is just something we memorize because an authority figure told us it was true.
Right.
Hubert's journey, whether you find it a scientifically valid unification theory or simply a fascinating piece of outsider art, proves the incredible power of asking fundamental, childlike questions. It demonstrates what happens when you refuse to blindly accept the established narrative.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We started this deep dive talking about that intimidating chalkboard covered in quantum equations and how it makes us feel like we aren't qualified to understand the universe.
Yeah.
But if rigid education and the intense pressure to be viewed as an expert can actually create intellectual blind spots for the smartest physicists in the world, what obvious truths in your own life or in your own career might you be missing simply because you stopped looking at the world with the unfiltered, unafraid curiosity of a beginner?
It is the danger of becoming too familiar with your own assumptions. Sometimes the hardest physical realities to see are the ones operating right in front of you.
Maybe it's time to stop staring at the chalkboard and just watch the spinning top for a while.
Well, Roman, I think it's safe to say my brain has officially done a few rotations of its own.
And whether listeners agree with every idea we explored today or just enjoyed the ride, I think there's something valuable in being willing to look again, especially at the things we've been told are too complicated to question.
Yep, I agree.
Creation has a way of whispering truth through patterns, motion, beauty, and order. That wonder doesn't lead us away from God, it draws us closer.
Well, that's a good place to land.
I agree. That wraps it up nicely.
So until next time, keep following those rabbit trails.
And keep watching for the revelations.
Preferably before Avery turns every household object into a theological demonstration.
Too late. I already have plans for the ceiling fan.
See you next time, folks!